Hello, and welcome to Human Conditions, part of the LRB's Close Readings podcast series. I'm your host, Adam Shatz, and this is the third of 4 conversations with the novelist, critic, and essayist Pankaj Mishra. The subject of this episode is Doris Lessing's 1962 novel, The Golden Notebook, widely regarded as one of the finest novels in English since the Second World War. A book that has assumed even greater significance thanks both to its formal inventiveness and its bold interweaving of the personal and the political. Doris Lessing was born Doris May Taylor in 1919 to British parents in Iran, where she lived until 1925. She moved with her parents to southern Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, and left school at the age of 14. In 1950, a year after moving to London, Lessing published her first novel, a study of race and violence set in southern Africa, The Grass is Singing. But it was the publication of The Golden Notebook, a book written in what she called a white heat, that brought her instant and enduring international fame. In her portrait of what she called free women, unmarried, pursuing their own projects and ambitions, both creative and erotic, Lessing wrote with a shocking frankness about things like menstruation and female orgasm. In the words of Margaret Drabble, here was a writer who said the unsayable and fearlessly put it down there in all its emotional and intellectual chaos. Drabble spoke for many readers when she said she experienced a state of excitement, terror, and awe when she read the book, a semi-deranged state not unlike that of Lessing's narrator. Not surprisingly, many women felt that Lessing spoke for them and hailed the book as a feminist work. But Lessing said it never occurred to her that she was writing a feminist Bible. She saw the book as a study of breakdown, reflecting the way that the convulsions of the period, not just over gender, but over Stalinism and decolonization, had left her characters unmoored with a disorienting sense of fragmentation. The form of the novel, too, reflected that sense of fragmentation. It is composed of 4 notebooks belonging to the writer Anna Wolf, an ex-communist who is struggling with writer's block as she tries to bring all of her notebooks into a 5th golden-colored notebook. Lessing's novel is not just about Wolf's life, it's about the writing of a life in a period when all that's solid seems to have melted into air. Pankaj, this is the third of your 4 selections, and it's the second novel after Naipaul's A House for Mr. Biswas, which was published a year before Lessing's book. What explains this choice? Why does The Golden Notebook resonate so powerfully with you?
Thank you, Adam, for that excellent introduction to the novel. I've always thought of this novel as an incredibly capacious thing. The kinds of things it holds, the sheer diversity of subjects it tackles is truly breathtaking. By the way, I'm very glad that you spoke about Lessing's distrust of people reading it as a primarily feminist novel. I'm glad, well, at least partly because here are 2 men discussing a novel that's widely upheld, still upheld as a great sort of landmark in feminist literature. In fact, when I told my wife earlier today that I was going to spend some time today talking to you about this book, she scoffed and said, "Well, here are 2 men yet again discussing a novel written by a woman and really primarily aimed at women." But I had to tell her at that point that actually Doris Lessing herself at some point got so exasperated by people telling her that this is a novel about uniquely about the predicament that women find themselves in. She had to tell them she was happier receiving responses from men who said that the novel was primarily political and was interested in political issues other than those between men and women. So I think, I mean, obviously, as I said, the novel is just full of so many different things. But what really strikes me as truly extraordinary about it, and what made me choose this over, so many potential candidates, so many potential novels, is that I think the unique biography of the author which, of course, is reflected in the novel, a biography that takes in the most traumatic episodes of the 20th century, starting with the First World War. I think the reason why she was born in Iran is because her father, who lost his leg during the First World War, decided to move there and then moved back to England, but found it too depressing and moved to southern Rhodesia, where she grew up. So here is this experience of the 21st century's primary calamity, you might call it, the First World War, and then a brief experience of Iran, and then, of course, the experience of a settler colonial society in southern Africa. And then, of course, she comes to England in 1949 with a very young child, leaving behind, let's not forget, two children she's had with another man. And then, of course, joins the Communist Party, gets caught up in the various internal struggles of the Communist Party in Britain at the time. And then, of course, is also trying to write fiction and also find a life for herself as a woman from the colonies, let's not forget, in London. So this is an experience that resonates at so many different levels. And also, the echoes can be heard in so many other books published around the time, including those by V.S. Naipaul, including those by Nadine Gordimer, not to mention The Wretched of the Earth, the various other texts of post colonial literature that are emerging around the same time.
Indeed. And the protagonist of the Golden Notebook, Anna Wolf, is very reminiscent in her own biography, in her own life circumstances, of Doris Lessing herself. The novel begins in 1957. It's a year after the Khrushchev revelations of Stalin's crimes. So it begins in 1957 in a London flat with a conversation between Anna Wolf, a white woman from southern Africa who seems like a stand-in for Lessing herself, and her friend Molly Jacobs, a Bohemian Jewish woman from London. They're both former members of the Communist Party. They both seem to have left as a result of the Khrushchev revelations, and their conversation is very intimate. It's often quite funny, and it begins with Anna saying that as far as she can see, everything is cracking up. Lessing said that, in a sense, is the theme of the book. What does she mean?
It's really interesting, that expression, cracking up. The person obviously who made it very famous was Scott Fitzgerald. And of course, he meant it very differently. He meant it really in terms of, what a young American writer undergoes in a society devoted to the pursuit of profit and the various pressures that are put upon talented people in the United States as a result of this particular ethic. But of course, I think Lessing has a very broad idea when she deploys the term cracking up, because I suppose she's talking about these very many clashing experiences that she's had and that she's having in the mid 1950s. Someone who's brought up, someone who's spent 25, 30 years of her life living amongst white colonialist settlers in southern Africa, an incredibly stifling society. And, in many ways, Britain represents a kind of liberation to her. At the same time, when she finally arrives in Britain, she has the revelation, which other people also arriving in England at the same time have, that England is an incredibly parochial, incredibly provincial society. So that's one source of disenchantment. The other experience that she wants to have, and she kind of, embraces communism, radicalism in Southern Africa, because she realizes that it's only communists who are fighting against racism in that particular part of the world. But when she again comes to the metropolitan centers of communism, she realizes this is something else. This is, very fractious. This is driven by personal egos. There's a lot of misogyny among communist movements, amongst sort of male communists. And then, of course, this whole project, the personal project that she has of freedom as a woman. And that again is compromised by her fascination for infatuation with men who treat her badly. So, at very many different levels, personal, political, she is faced with a kind of inner incoherence. And her notebooks, these 4 notebooks that she keeps, the novel that she's writing, is an attempt to achieve some kind of personal integrity. But I think what's really interesting is, someone like her should see this sort of wider experience of fragmentation in the 50s, in the early 60s, and that not many people in Britain at the time, or for that matter, in the United States, were able to see it. And I do think it has a great deal to do with her location, with her kind of early first location in Southern Africa. Someone like Naipaul, who comes to England in 1950, a year after Lessing arrives there, is also attesting to a similar kind of breakup, both political and personal. I mean, the title of one of his books, Finding the Center, or his, confessions in various other narratives, that he thought of London as this place where he would achieve a kind of wholeness. And then he realizes, actually, no, the center doesn't exist there either, that he has arrived at a time of breakup. So it's an extraordinarily modern experience that she is confessing to in the late 50s. And I think, obviously people have written about this earlier in the century in Europe, particularly. But I think what makes this novel unique, that this is an experience of fragmentation, of a very, very demoralizing lack of wholeness that is being described from perspective, first of all, of a woman, and then furthermore, a woman from the colonies. And that's what makes this novel so distinctive and gives it such a wide geopolitical and emotional sweep at the same time.
Thanks for listening to this extract from Human Conditions, a close reading series from the London Review of Books. To listen to the full episode and all our other close reading series, sign up to our close reading subscription at lrb.me/close readings or click on the link in the description.